Hello and welcome to In the Making, a series of conversations from North Bennett Street School where we connect with a range of new voices, fields, and perspectives. Before we get into our conversation, I want to thank the many supporters that make our programs possible, including the Massachusetts Cultural Council. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Kristen Odell. I'm an NBSS staff member and host of In the Making. We are here on location in the Cambridge studio of artist and entrepreneur Zainab Sumu.
Hello.
To share her multidisciplinary practice of fashion, sculpture, drawing, and painting, as you can see all around us. A native of Sierra Leone, Zainab studied in the UK and France before moving to the US to study fashion design and fiber arts at the Mass College of Art and Design here in Boston. In 2015, she referenced her childhood in Africa and her experience in high-end fashion to start her business Zainab Sumu Primitive Modern. More recently, Zainab has expanded her studio to share her other work such as painting and sculpture, inspired by the cultural touchstone of a country in Africa and designed for the globally minded who share a love for Africa's rich and visual cultural heritage. Also, much like our last In the Making guest, Zainab's work is currently in the permanent collection at the Quinn House in Boston. So we're here in her studio. We're trying to give you an immersive experience. We're surrounded by all of your work. Tell us what we're looking at, Zainab.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Christine, and I guess NBSS for having me and for visiting my space. So we are in my makeshift home studio, and around me you will see a couple of my work. These, I guess, sculptural clothing or wearable woven, hand-woven pieces, and then some collectibles, some vintage or antique bags, and beads and necklaces from Morocco, and like a piece that I just started working on. And on the other side, it's a woven sculpture that I'm working on for a show and exhibition I have coming up. And to the back are a bunch of sculptural woven sculptures and painting, and La Man de Fatima, which some people know of, which is like for protection. So it's like
Yes.
my little thing there. And
That's your
some,
guardian.
yeah, my
Yeah.
guardian,
Yeah.
yes. And then you don't see the pictures, but my parents are on the other corner.
Oh,
Yes.
beautiful. I was wondering where they were.
Yeah, they like if you like they're in the back
Yeah.
there. And then some of my sketches, like from the my fashion sketches and
Mhm.
stuff. So yeah.
Before we detour, this is antique. What is the age of this?
Oh, that's oops.
Do we
That's
know?
like yeah. I think that's probably I don't know like 20 something years old. Yeah, I got that. It's like a Berber. It's one of the like the bags that they use when they travel in the desert. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like an old piece that of this collector that I work with in Marrakesh. Like he always finds these really rare and hard to find pieces. And when
Mm-hmm.
I see, I'm just like, yeah, that's amazing with all the beadwork and then the vintage jewelry on it. Yeah, I
One
just
of
love it.
one of the pieces that I want to make sure everybody can hear us okay. Looks like you can. One of the pieces that we've seen a lot of yours, and maybe our guests have seen in our promo for this conversation, is the crown. It's hidden back here right now. We don't need to get it, but the beaded crown.
Oh, you mean the round one?
Yes.
Yes.
So do you source from this material for that?
Absolutely. So it is that one. It was something I found at the market at the souk in Essaouira, and this guy had it. It was like all broken. It's all these beads, and normally I will buy if I see anything like this, I'll buy it, and most times I will repurpose it, and that's what I did with that. I just got some. I had leather beads. And I just made it into like this crown, like a headpiece, and used like vintage beads and found like jewelry, Berber jewelry. That's
Yeah. If for our guests, you can't, it's kind of tucked behind this material, but you can see it on our social, and I'm sure it's shared on your
it's
social.
nine, yes.
It's the crown. One thing I want to ask you about is, so we have Textiles we have watercolors, basket weaving, 3D wearable sculpture. What is sort of the order of operations? Like, what's the first point, and then onward from there?
Well, so normally when like you've mentioned, I normally choose a cultural touchstone in a community in Africa, and I will travel to that community and immerse myself in it for several months and get as much information I can and work with the people as well. But everything normally starts with my sketches. I will just doodle or make notes. And then when I come back to the US is when I start working, I'll create the artwork that ends up being the watercolors. But most times I will take that and I transfer it to my computer and work with it digitally and then create the artwork that becomes the textiles.
Yeah.
And I do take that artwork that I send to the factory. I work with a factory in Italy that's been around for over 70 something years, and they're in Como, and they especially, that's what they do is like fabrics and I only work with natural fibers, and they're really good. They do really small batches, which is what I do as well. So, and it's important to me. So I start with the textiles, and then like each inspiration informs the rest of the work. So for instance, the top I'm wearing.
Yeah, if you could explain this.
The top I'm wearing was inspired by Ginawa music from Morocco. And what I wanted to interpret is the rhythm of Ginawa music, which is this very meditative and repetitive and just transcendental music. And I wanted to sort of interpret that in not only the textiles, but in creating these hand-woven pieces. It's like I listen to the music as I created them. And then going on to the sculptures in the back, the woven sculptures, it is all from the same inspiration. It's just different forms of
different iterations
of the same. Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Absolutely. And yeah, you can see some of the textiles
yes
over there. So.
Yes. And also you had mentioned that not only the pattern is reflective of your experience there and the culture in that one place, but the style of the garment itself. You said the musicians wear embroidery. That's what it was.
Yes, it is. So these were like, this is like an interpretation of the embroideries. It's like my iteration of that. Like when you see, if you ever seen a Ginawa musician, they wear these long gowns that are really colorful and covered in beautiful embroideries. And they wear these hats that are covered in cowrie shells. And so if you see my pants has like the cowrie shells, it has the cracker bat, which is the instrument that they play the music on. So with and so which is why you see the cowrie shells on those and there as well. So
beautiful.
Thank you.
So one thing that we've talked about is your background we've talked about science and art. You weren't so you grew up in Sierra Leone and left Sierra Leone in high school, right? And you changed course and were doing something non-creative, right? Is that when you went into biomed?
So I was doing, so I did like pre-med because of course I was a good student and I like did well in the sciences. So of course my dad, was like, you're going to be a doctor. And I was just like, yes, I'm going to be a doctor. And so started that whole thing. And it was just like, the more I got into it, the more I realized like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And it got to the point where I just had to just like tell my dad, I'm like, listen, like, this is not working for me. And he was really good about it. And he just was like, whatever you decide to do, I know will be the right thing.
And is that the moment when you're like, I'm going into fashion, and you you worked for Comme des Garçons, or?
No, it was like before, because I was still in college, and actually that was the last conversation I had with my dad, because we spoke that night, and then the next morning he
oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, and then
wait, telling him you were leaving biomed was,
and that was and it was a time that there was a lot of turmoil also going on in my country, and there was a lot of things, and he was just really heartbroken, not by what I told him, but because of things that were going on in the country and where he found himself. And it was just like one of those things. I called the next day to speak with him, and he had had a heart attack. And
And he
yeah,
was gone.
so
Yeah.
like that period was like really crazy for me, because then it was like, okay, now I need to figure life out. And it was
Mm-hmm.
just like being a young adult and then all of that. But I just like zoned out, and it was just, now I was in survival mode. It was like, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried my hand at marketing, advertising, and all the stuff, and then it's just
I'm
so.
not seeing that.
I know. And then I came to New York, and got lucky and got the position at Comme des Garçons. And
Mm.
yeah, and it was sort of like reconnecting with like design, with sort of my past and my passion. And it was really wonderful just to be in that world, and working with all these amazing people and seeing how things get done. And
Mm-hmm.
that really inspired me. And yeah, it was after that I started my own little foray into it, like opening my own store. And then I was just like, yeah, this, I need to go back to
You need to
school.
study
I
more
need
on
to
this.
study more
Yeah.
on this. So that's when I, yeah,
That's when you
decided.
came to Mass College of Art.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you take? I mean, what did you take from working in the fashion world to this? I think you had mentioned this before. What's the one thing that you took from like Comme des Garçons that you've incorporated in your business here?
I think from Comme des Garçons, it's attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was
From
like
all the way to your
every piece, everything mattered so much, from the branding, from the way you write, to the packaging, to how things are folded and all. So it was like, that was a major, because before that I had seen it from afar, but just being there. And it's
mm-hmm.
even with the stories behind, like how for each season, each collection, the amount of thought that goes into it, and every single did, like nothing is left. It's like everything is just pieced together
Yes.
so thoroughly. I mean, the Japanese are very organized when it comes to everything. And that's one thing I learned from. So I knew that when no matter what I started, no matter what I was doing, that aspect of it was going to be there,
Mm-hmm.
that I needed, that everything will be reached, because the branding is as important as the product is, as
Huge.
and it's like, you can have a beautiful product, but if you put it in a brown bag, then it loses its
Unless you're making that like the
it's like,
thing.
if it's like, but if it's, yeah, if it's that brown bag, that's very special brown bag, then
Yeah.
yes, it works. So it is, those are like, it was very important to, because not only Comme des Garçons, but for me, being exposed to the work of Alaya, Azedine Alaya, and seeing
Mm.
how the setup in their studio, in the atelier, how things were done. So that really impacted me, and in how I set to do everything that I do. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I love you mentioning just down to how something is folded, because even us as consumers, that's the first thing you see. And if it's just wadded up or sloppy, I mean, definitely it affects everything.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like with my textiles, when you buy it, it comes in this beautiful box, because it's that whole thing that I want. You give it to somebody as a gift, or even for yourself, that it's that peeling of it to see what is
Mm.
revealed afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
It is very important to me, because there's so much of me that goes into the products that I create, into the artwork that I create, that just, I want you to
You need
feel
to see
that.
that
You need
through.
to see
Yeah.
that. Well, I want you,
Yeah.
when you get that, to know that you're getting something special.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, you reference your childhood or your upbringing in Africa through all of your work, and you just said just now that you want to carry that through from, inception of idea to the second somebody opens a product. So,
Mm.
what, I mean, tell me about that. Tell me about sort of the importance of you carrying along that or sharing that culture with us.
So to me, like, what I do is about keeping culture, right? It's like, it's about the people, the places, and all this thing, and it's about traditions and the culture, and how and why it exists,
Mm-hmm.
and how and why it persists. How do you keep, who keeps it, who are the touch
Yeah, who are the
bearers,
culture
who are the
bearers?
cultural bearers.
The
So
the person you mentioned with this, tell
yeah.
us about that.
So it's like, for
That's an
instance,
example.
the Bogolon, or I was telling you about the textile from when I was researching the Fulani series, and I was interested in acquiring some of the antique textiles from that were created for as dowry for the women when they get married.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out there was this one guy that still exists in Mali, like in the villages, like outside of Jene. That's the only person that's
Mm-hmm.
still doing it because it's gone. It's no longer exists. And my goal, my dream and goal is to eventually connect with that man so I can learn from him how to do that so it doesn't die down because the younger generation people are not
Yeah,
interested, they
they're not
don't see the
interested.
value in it. And so for me it is important because firstly not only to somehow my hope is to change the narrative that's been and that perception that's been there of Africa and about it, even though the tradition, the art and everything is such a rich and of historical significance. And it's just to keep people come in contact with my work, they see the value in it
Mm-hmm.
because there's like a connection that we are extremely interconnected, and things that you feel when you come across an art piece, it's the same thing that when you're looking at that architecture, like whether it's the Great Mosque of Jenne or you stand in front of a building somewhere in Europe, it's that same thing that you feel
Yeah,
inside.
yeah.
It is visceral. You can't explain it, but it is just there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want people to get, when they come across my work, that
Mm-hmm.
they feel that joy and
I mean,
that
I feel it
connection.
in
It's
this room. I
like
feel it being in your home.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Something that you've said that is just kind of opens my mind and that our guests should be aware of is this idea of that you growing up in Africa, everything is craftsmanship around you. Everything is handmade and everything is
It's
sustainable.
sustainable. Yeah.
It's
It's
innately
it's
sustainable.
innately, it is every day is sustainable because, I think it has to do with its need. Is
Mm-hmm.
because people, like, something breaks, you mend it, right? You want to create something, you look around you for resources.
Right.
It's like for the homes, when you want to build your home, well, you find, there's the clay, there's the mud, and there's the palm branches, there's all of that you can put together and have your living space. And it's been around for me growing up. I grew up with the carpet on the floor was handmade. The poofs we sat on was like everything, the textiles, and my mom collected handmade textiles. I remember, like, she had this very special suitcase that had tons and tons of textiles, um, handmade from around Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something that I grew around, that I somehow, you take it for granted, but I also respected it because I saw, the importance of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
So you saw that like an object can represent so much,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah, it's like, it's just this, you surround yourself and you don't know, it's like, for me, it's you don't realize it then, but then in hindsight, you think, you're just like, yeah, this is what this was, this is how I felt, this is why these things bring me so much comfort.
mm-hmm.
And because they tie me back to so much, and there's so much of my history and traditions and everything that's in it. And so for me, I just grew up around so much
Right.
craftsmanship, and I got my very first sewing machine at age 8,
Mm-hmm.
9, and I've always been making things by hand. So, and I grew up with my mom having things made around me, like textiles made around me too. So I
So that
yeah,
making and craftsmanship has just sort of always been
it's
in
always
your,
been
yeah.
around me, and of course I never knew it was something that I could make into a career, something that I wanted to do, until I started taking classes, and I was just like, oh my god, I'm home. And it just felt, and
Yes.
I actually haven't looked back. It was just so comforting to me that when I was at school, I was going to school full time and working full time, and
But so filled.
I was so, yeah, I would be up until 5 in the morning
Yeah.
working on a project, and then I have to go to work. But it was like I was so energized. I was
Mm-hmm.
never really even tired or feeling overwhelmed. It was just,
That is when you know that
yeah,
that's your path that you have
yeah,
to stay on.
yeah.
Yeah. What about when you moved to this country, or even when you moved to Paris and the UK? What did you have to adapt to as far as you know? Well, no, let me rephrase that. Going into your own business, is it an uphill battle? This notion of training the masses that craftsmanship is quality. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't need to be fast fashion. Doesn't need to be, you know, mass produced to be something that you want.
Well, I mean, everybody who's like in my type of business knows that. But for me, I what I do is not for the masses per se. It is for the people who get it. And so there are people who appreciate and respect that aspect of making, and those are the people that clearly are naturally attracted to my work. Now, there are other people who might not be, who just always been attracted to fast fashion because that's all they knew, but then get introduced to my work, and I love, that's the aspect that I love the
Mm,
most, because there are people who become converts, who they're just happy to just pick up something that's cheap that they can use and then dispose of, but then come across my work, especially the textiles, and then realize, oh, there's value in this, because they put it on, and it's not only how it makes them feel, but it's how they see people around them react.
mm-hmm.
So it is like, when I can get somebody who gets introduced to my work, and then now, because of that way they start get really understanding the importance of it. So that's
Yeah.
basically what it.
We had talked about not to get too heady with this topic, but you are connecting the folks that you sell to that are buying your product to, you know, thousands of years of culture,
Mm,
right? Um, we talked earlier about these sort of extreme sides of, say, the high-end art world, and then the low-end sort of appropriation
yeah.
of designs and textiles that you go and buy in Urban Outfitters for $5. I mean, they're opposing spectrums, but tell us about that. We had this frustrating conversation about, you know, the buying of, you know, the high art world buying of collectibles that are then never to be seen again.
Yeah, it is, that's, I think, for anyone from any culture, like you, we were talking, and how you mentioned having been of American Indian descent, and for anyone from cultures that have been persecuted or taken advantage of, it is that thing where you see work that's supposed to be part of whatever country, part of the patrimony of a country, now ends up in somebody's private collection. I'd gotten a book a year ago, and there was all this amazing artwork from that was dug up from like thousands of years ago, from Jenny and from Sierra Leone, from different places around the world, and all of them in this one book. And it was all from the collection of this one person, this physician that had been collecting this thing. And my first instinct was, wait a minute, these are things that should belong to these countries, and that
Mm,
should be part of the countries. But why are these, how did
yeah.
they even leave the country, much less how did they end up in this person's
To never
private
be
collection?
seen
To never,
by
and
artists
and then
or,
he ends up selling them on an auction at Sotheby's, and now and even private collection. It's one thing for them to collect it and then end up giving them to museums where people can actually see them and enjoy them.
mm-hmm.
But then it is just gone, because now no one ever gets to see. And that really bothers me, because now somebody is just, for them, it's an investment.
Yeah,
Because down the line, they're going to sell it to the highest bidder.
yeah.
And then that person is going to sell it to somebody else. So now it's not even of the historical and cultural significance is gone, because no one really gets to see them and say, there's some people, there are other artists and younger people who might get inspired
Mm-hmm.
to continue that work, because those works don't exist anymore.
Right.
And so,
Or
yeah,
someone who just would like to see a piece of their culture, you know?
yeah, and it is like now they're sitting locked up somewhere, and no
Mm-hmm.
one really. So that
Yeah.
that.
So that's actually what you're doing though. You're filling a gap right there where you're literally going to this country and dissecting it and finding all of your inspiration from there. So
Yeah.
you are a through line. It's an overplayed statement, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Thank you all. I mean, doing my part.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to be done, and it is doing what I, wish I had before me that could inform me. Because part of the reason why I started is because there was so much Africa. It's a mystery to so many people and to myself. And to me, it's like, okay, I need to decipher like a lot of things that I need to learn about. And that's why I am on this quest to just find out, learn as much as I can, and, and use this, my platform, or as an interpretation to just share my work and what I'm learning with others. And
so on culture and what our cultures are, we talked about what is mine. I don't know, but you helped me figure it out.
Yeah.
But you lost family in Sierra Leone, and you have family still there.
We have the extended family thing, so you
Right,
can
right.
never be without family. So
But you've been here for so long, and what are the pieces of Africa that you still are drawn to? Because many people will move to a different country and just totally absorb, a new culture and want nothing to do with where they came from. So what are the pieces for you that you?
Oh, like there's so much.
Well, you
But it's
mentioned
like I start with
food.
food because
Yeah.
like that's my connection. It's like normally when I feel like a little bit of like homesick, it's like when I will burst it out, go to HMAT and get sick, because that's the one place I can go and find everything. And so the like food is like one of the my strongest connections, because it's like that one thing that even each time when I love to entertain, so when I have people come over, it's like, okay, you're about to have some African food, get ready, because it's not going to be light. It's like
You're gonna
there's a
share it in a big bowl.
yeah, there's a lot of things. So but that's my one way of keeping. And then the other way is this.
Yeah,
It's
obviously.
my
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
So
Well, I mean, I also ask that from the perspective of when you have trauma, and you don't, and you're a very forward moving person, which I relate to. You don't really, things that you don't want to really think about and look back on, and yet you're forcing yourself to by maintaining this culture and sharing it. I mean, is that catharsis or?
well, like, yeah, it is. And it is for me, it's, yeah, I'm moving forward. And I'm not in that thing of like being so obsessed with something that happened to me in the past that I don't let it go. No, it is like I don't forget it. It is there as a reminder, but life goes on. And what did I learn from that? And what are the positive aspects that informed me in that, in that trauma? What there's still important things and the great good things that have happened, and I want to hold on to those. And even with the negative, like, for me, one of the most traumatic experiences was losing my dad. But there's like so many good things that he brings, like when I think of him. And I'm doing this because of what he taught me. So, and my love for Africa is through him, and my mom as well. So I can't pretend that that doesn't exist. It's still there, but I'm using that to sort of heal myself, and in the process get something, learn something, educate myself, create something that I can share with the world. So
change is constant.
yes, it is. It's like everything.
Thing.
Yeah, it's.
What there was a time when you were not, and I think we already touched on this, but I want to dive into it. And mostly for other people, what would you say to other folks who, there was a time in your life where you were not doing this and you were not being creative, not using your hands, and then you came to mass art and you were just like totally filled up with creativity and joy. I guess what's your take on following that voice?
Yeah, I mean, it's the best thing I think I ever did, because it was like that period was like I was completely lost. Like it was the time when I was trying to figure out myself, and I was on survival mode,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And when you like that, when you like in that place where it's like, okay, I have to leave, I have to, and so it was not about what connecting, it was just about living. It's about existing, and it was not. I mean, it's I needed that time because I appreciate now because I had to go through that time. So it is,
What would you be doing if, like, what was the other fork that you would have taken?
and I know if I wasn't doing this,
Yeah.
I have no idea. I can't even think of anything. I mean, it was like that. What I was doing before was as a buyer, as a, I had, um, I know I was really good at finding great creative people,
Mm-hmm.
and the store that I opened was like a very curated work from around not only European avant-garde designers and African, and mix it up with all artwork from African, all of that. So
So creative
it was
direction.
great. I was doing, yeah, creative direction, which is what I still do with what I do,
Mm-hmm.
but in just different. Now I'm the creator
Right.
as opposed to like, you know, curating other people's work. So that was what I thought that I should be doing. But even then, doing that, I was just always like, I'll be telling the creators like, oh, you know, have you thought of doing it this way? Have you thought of the, and that's why I was just like, wait a minute, you know, you've always wanted, it's something in you that you wanted to do. Why don't you do it? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I don't know if I would have, I mean, I enjoyed when I was doing it, and I think it served its time, and I'm doing right now what I'm meant to do.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So but you always knew, and um, you led yourself to this place.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Where do you see this going? Like, what's the next sort of iteration of design? Where is this going?
Where is it going?
It doesn't have
What
to
does
go
it,
anywhere,
it's not
but
going anywhere. I
is
think
your
it's
mind
just,
like spinning about,
well, my mind is always spinning about what else can I learn that I can, you know, incorporate into my practice. And so I am always looking into, like I told you that I've been looking into North Bennett Street School and looking at all the
oh yeah,
programs. So
yeah.
like, you know, what else can I line? I'm just like totally getting into woodwork right now. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because I know it would go so, it will marry so well
What do you want to do? You mentioned it, but
yeah,
what
with,
do you want to do?
so it's more to go with the woven sculptures,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's like it would lend itself to that, like just the blending of materials. And you see I've been working with the calabash, so
Mm-hmm.
that's like a natural, like
It's
it's
kind of
the gourd,
wood.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like the gourd, which is sort of like wood, and it's how do I make it more than what
Mm-hmm.
it is, like more than just like looking at it like you know, like just utilitarian. How do I make it into something else? And that's, and I want to
So maybe dream about making your
delve,
own wooden
yeah,
shape and
yeah,
then weaving into that.
yeah, and delve more. I actually want to continue working with the calabash, and see what else can I do with it. How can I, maybe we'll go with, because it is a natural, it's a vegetable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, let's see what else can I do with it. Let's like yeah, so it's always, I like to probe and say, okay, what else, you know, it's me like learning basket making and making it something totally different from what it is. I mean, it's still, I'm using the techniques of making baskets, and I use it to build clothes.
Mm-hmm. The same
That's the
technique, the
same,
same
yeah,
basket
the same
technique.
basket making technique,
Yeah.
and use it even to build all the forms that I create. So it
Mm-hmm.
is always, I'm always like searching, and um,
I have two questions. One is, they're totally separate. One is, what are the materials that you print scarves on?
I use, like I mentioned before, like all natural
All natural.
fibers. So it depends for each series. It's like, do I want to use linen? Is it silk? So I normally use linen, silk, wool. cotton. So I have some work coming in, and that I'm excited about. So it's like all silk and a mix of cashmere
And yeah, I mean, I was feeling them earlier. It's very thin, beautiful silk, very sort of rough but soft linen.
mhm.
I already can see the one that I want, and I'll let
Yeah.
you know after this.
Yes.
But
But it's like, yeah, no, I prefer to work with natural fibers
mhm.
because it's yeah.
And speaking back to the factory that you use to print these, it's seven. This was a question I had about them earlier. They've been around for 70 years.
75, I think already.
75.
Yeah.
They are they they're new to digitally printing. What kind of printing methods were they using, you know?
They have all, I mean, I think they do digital, they do is it the monoprint? It's like
Mm-hmm.
they, yeah, and La Riosetta is the name of the company, and um they everything they do is extremely, they do small
Small
batches. They
batch.
work with preliminary like small companies, and they do with two like well-known um the couture houses in Europe. um but I they work in very sustainable, they like no waste, no, so it's
Mm-hmm.
and they're very strict. They really all about quality and craftsmanship, and I kid you not, if they make the slightest mistake,
They
if no,
no, it doesn't get to
no, it
you.
doesn't get to me. And I've just like, I've been times where I'm like, look, no, it doesn't matter. It's like, no,
It's
it's
like the
our
tiniest
reputation. It's
thing.
like,
Yeah.
so I love that, and it's very important for me that the quality and the knowing how passionate the people who do it in the factory, that because everything, even with the finishing, everything is done by hand. They have fold, it's folded,
Those
and
the
the
edges. Oh
edges
my
are
God.
done by hand.
That's
Yeah, so
wild.
it is like,
I know
so
how tedious that is.
tedious it is
It's
to get that. So which is why normally when people tell me, oh, but this is a girl, it's like, I should be charging more.
mm-hmm.
Which is like,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
because there's so much work that goes into it. It's like, not from my part, it's like there's a lot of, I spend time researching, I spend time sketching, I spend time putting it in, in the computer,
Painting it,
painting it,
digitizing it.
digitizing it, and all of that, creating the artwork, and then sending it to a factory that puts time and effort. That's why it's not done instantly. It takes them time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the tunnel, so it's normally around between a month to 2 months for them to turn around. So
Well,
it's
one can tell sitting in front of the fabric itself. I mean, looks very high quality.
thank
You
you.
can tell. You can just tell that it's been, hand processed all the
This
way
is,
through.
yeah, I mean, attention to detail. It's very important to me.
Mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm,
like, I
mm-hmm.
mean, it's about aesthetics at the end of the day, but
Yeah.
that's
So, and this is no knock to the mass produced printers out there, such as Spoonflower. I'm not, there's no knocking that because that has a place, but I do just want to recognize that that's why, working with a small batch printer is important to note for our
yeah.
guests
No, it's important because it's not just like thousands and thousands of stuff then thrown into a machine. I mean, even that has its place, but for me, it's important for people to know that whatever you get, and it's something special.
Mhm.
And it's something because it stands the test of time. You use something you can use and over and pass down to someone else if you want to in the future, or you can have in your position in your possession until you want someone else to own it. It's not something that you can wear and dispose of.
Right.
Like, no matter how many times you wear it, you can still enjoy it. The older it gets, the better it gets.
I love this thought too, passing it down, because we talked about both losing our fathers, and how the things that we hold on to, and that's, I mean, I don't have a piece of clothing from my father, but if I did, that is the thing you hold on to.
Yeah, I mean, it's just things that it's of quality and value that you can pass along. I mean, I have went at things like clothing my mom wore, and so the times when I miss her, I throw it on, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, yeah, and I feel her with me. So it is that when you get something that's made by someone like by a maker, you're getting something special. And it's not just
Definitely.
because like what you pay for it, yeah, it does help, but it goes far beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
The other question I wanted to ask was sort of a broad ranging question about textiles. And for our guests, feel free to throw questions our way. But so I'm holding this one gorgeous textile on my lap. Can you just, in a nutshell, tell us, what's the difference between something like this that is authentic to a place as opposed to what somebody's going to go and buy, down the line and
Well, I mean, if you look at it, like, I mean, we're looking at a piece of bogolong from Mali. I bought this when I was in Jene. It's like there's these women that create this. So you have the cotton from this is woven in Mali, and then the women use it's like mud. This is also bogolong is also called a mud cloth. And we were talking in recent years, it's become fashionable with the interior designers, and you see them using these to have create pillows or as a throw. And the unfortunate side of that is like most of it is not made, it's not from there because they're made in China. Not to knock made in China, but it's also people can easily take a picture of this or copy it and then get it printed like
printed.
in
Yeah,
spoon
yeah, yeah,
flowers. So
yeah,
you're
yeah.
seeing all of that, but there's so much, these like the shape, the designs, everything, this it's of historical and traditional significance and cultural significance to these people and these artists that create these work. And so when you buy something that you just find in wherever you find it for $10-15, just know that it's not coming from there,
Mm-hmm.
because then it will not be that cheap.
I mean, I imagine that everybody in this audience, we all know that, but it's worth reminding
It's
us
like
that yes, that is not from that
it's not
place.
from that place, because then it will not be, you won't be getting it for that cheap. Or also there are people who they will come across something like this and knowing very well the amount of painstaking work that goes into it, and then say, oh my God, that's so expensive. You
Oh,
get it, that expect you to sell it for as cheap as they find in one of these, fast fashion places. And it's just like, really? Like,
this is a
it's
common
so
thing with anything well crafted. Take framing for instance. Have how many people are so curious as to why is this so
so
expensive?
expensive.
It's because it's quality wood. They're human hands milling it, human
Mhm.
hands joining it, doing the work, and on down the line.
Yeah. Well, it's like then people will say to you, "Oh, well, the human hands touching those clothes that are done in these large factories around, whether it's in China or Bangladesh or whatever." Yeah, they are touching them, but it's not these like when you think about the conditions that they make those people go through as well.
Yeah, that's the
That's
cost.
the cost,
Yeah,
because you have thousands of people thrown into a little room and then forced to do things just so you can have it cheaper.
yeah, yeah.
So
That's
it
bad.
is
It's
like,
bad, bad,
yeah,
bad.
it is the choice that.
Something else that I wanted to speak to on sort of ethical buying and where this mass product ends up. You had mentioned to me the problem with landfill excess waste clothes
Yeah.
in Africa. What's Tell me
Well,
about that again.
that comes from, the secondhand clothing thing. It's
From here.
from here.
Yeah.
It is major, and it's part of the reason why there was a time when I will take a lot of things to Salvation Army and places like that. But those secondhand, because when they don't sell, they need to get rid of that
We're
stuff.
talking secondhand from like excess from
From
fast
excess from
fashion
fast
by big
fashion,
box
not the
stores.
really good old vintage things. We're
Yeah.
talking about the cheapy things that people wear once and need to throw away, and they give it to these places where now they can sell them. So, but they need to get rid of them, and they can't do it here. So now you have the systems in place where they end up in Africa in most part, in most for the most part. And so if you go to most times the markets in West Africa and East Africa, you will find, I think mostly in Eastern Northwestern Africa, it's huge, like secondhand clothing. It's a huge thing. And when they don't sell, they end up in the landfill. So some people use them, they discard them. So you end up like this. It is now like a huge, huge, huge problem.
And are we talking like, I mean, everything excess, but are we talking like poly blends? Is that why we're
Yes.
talking about the things
We're
that
talking
aren't
about
going to
the
break
things that,
down?
that don't break down.
Yeah.
Because the ones, that's the thing with natural fibers, it's like
Yeah.
it breaks down.
Mhm.
So it's not as like no matter you throw it out, after a while it will break down and it gets into the soil and becomes even like some like enriching to the soil, right? But when you have like these there are man-made natural fibers too that do break down because they made like where like you get the blend that you get from cotton. That is, even though it's man-made, but it's still natural. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the ones that don't break down. It's
Right.
like,
It will be in the
it's
landfill forever, of course.
forever.
Yeah, which
And
is
so now it's
polyblend, which we don't
polyblends,
really wear
which is
anyway.
no. And
Ugh.
it tastes just like plastic. It goes from one place to the other and it just stays there. So
Yeah. So an amazing country that produces and exists in natural fibers is now overrun by our wasted synthetic
landfill.
excess.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the
And that's
storyline
the
here.
storyline, basically.
A question from a guest, Zainab, I'd love to see all of these amazing pieces. Do you have a place to display the items in Boston?
Oh, well, yeah. Unfortunately, right now, since COVID, because I had a studio in Sower that I had to close during COVID. Well, it was not, it just coincidentally COVID happened and then I was getting out of it. But I do have, it's online on my website for the textiles, and I do have my studio website as well. But I do going to, since now we slowly getting free of COVID, I'm going to start having like trunk shows and events where people can be exposed to the things. So yeah.
You also have, and it's maybe too soon to speak, but you have some shows coming up.
I have
to look
some
forward
shows
to.
coming up to look forward to, and it will be, I will keep you abreast of that. But I have like a show coming up in the spring, and we'll have some events happening soon. So like, yeah. But in the meantime, if you like anything, you can check out the website. I think especially the textiles are there, and my studio website has some of my work as well.
I just want to show can we show
this
an
one?
indigo?
Yes.
Again, we're just going to take this last minute to show these gorgeous real textiles that Zainab has brought back.
Oh, I know, this is one of my favorites.
And the smell too.
Yeah, you smell the indigo.
Is it indigo?
Yeah.
It's just really beautiful.
Yeah, this I love because these are done by the women in Futajanlo in Labes, like. And so you have the men that weave the cotton cloth, and then the women are the ones that
are dyeing
it. Yeah.
And you can't see this.
The gold, woven with gold. Woven with gold.
And this is just interesting to me why this is so shiny, and you told me why is it? Because
it's like,
just cotton.
It's cotton, and then it's like it's immersed after it's clean and dry, and it's immersed in starch before it's dried, and then afterwards they use this really hard wooden, it's laid on a wooden board, and then they use this wood to beat it. So literally it's beaten to shininess.
Every inch of it,
every inch of it is beaten to shininess. So
it's just beautiful.
I love it. It's like, so to me it's like one of the things I love about my travels is like I get, like, every place I go to, I try to work with these local artisans, and not only acquire, it's like work with them to create some of my work, but also buy some of their work as well, collect their work, because I think it's.
Do you have a room in your home that's filled with?
Yes, I just had to get these all just I just had to go into my special trunk and just,
that no one else is allowed into.
No one else is allowed to.
I have one of those. Yeah.
Where you keep all the special artifacts that from time to time you just go like,
yes, like gorgeous velvets, no one's allowed to touch them.
No, yeah.
Well, I think if anybody else has any questions, we're going to end here. And I just want to thank you so much, Zainab, for letting us in your home.
Well, thank you for having me. It's
Yeah.
been wonderful talking to you, and
And thank you for
like
sharing
yes,
your culture with us. I
absolutely.
mean,
Thank you,
yeah,
thank you,
it's
and
beautiful. And thank you to all of
thank
our
you
guests for being
everyone for
here.
attending, and
Yeah, and we'll see you soon,
we'll
and
see you soon.
we'll send Zainab's information in an email afterwards. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you.